What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, April 17th, 2017, and we have got so much to talk about today. What a crazy, insane world we are currently living in. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Ken is in our control room today, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. So let's start off with all the wars that are going on, and I'm not going to take them in any particular order because they're all very, very serious situations here. Now, apparently over in Syria, the government forces have already taken back all of the gains made by the U.S.-backed rebels following Donald Trump's cruise missile attack on that Syrian airfield. So $90 million worth of cruise missiles, and everything is back to status quo ante again, except, of course, for all those missiles that missed and hit nearby villages, killing civilians and children. Now, apparently there's been a horrible incident. The Western-backed moderate rebels apparently attacked a community of Ma'ulula, which was an Aramaic Christian community, and apparently just killed pretty much everybody there. And it's a reminder that, you know, there are a lot of Christians being killed in these war zones. And these war zones were all created by the United States of America. Now, interestingly enough, in comments on ABC's This Week, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster basically said he doubted the U.S. would send more troops to Syria. This, of course, in direct contradiction to the comment we had from the White House end of last week that the U.S. could send 50,000 troops into Syria, even though they don't really have a legitimate reason to be there. And so now we're seeing a report coming out of Pravda where U.S.-led coalition forces conducted a landing operation in Syria's Deir ez-Zor. Now, the official story is they went in there to get rid of some of ISIS supplies. For all we know, they went in there to resupply them, because we know ISIS is working for the United States of America. Now, Pompeo's out there insisting that Russia's lying, Putin is lying, everybody's lying, nobody has any credibility, and yet is still insisting that they cannot show any proof that Assad gassed his own people because it will reveal sources and methods. It must be classified. You just take our word for it. No, we're not going to take your word for it. We've been lied to too many times. And this last story never made any sense at all. Assad was on the verge of winning against the U.S.-backed rebels. There were peace talks underway that would have secured his continuing position as president of Syria. And even the White House had said, we have to accept that reality. So why would Assad carry out a chemical weapon attack on civilians, on a militarily insignificant target, doing the one thing that would allow the U.S. to go on in and strike Syria on behalf of the rebels, ISIS and Al-Qaeda? The story never made sense. Where was Assad's motive? We seem to be dealing with a government that is absolutely insisting that, you know, if you're actually using your brain, if you're asking questions, if you're being logical and rational and analytical, that you are being unpatriotic. If you think, you must be a Russian stooge. Now, Russia is saying, their indications are it was a false flag. Pompeo is saying, well, of course Russia's lying. Russia lies about everything. Russia lied to us all about Iraq's nuclear weapons. No, actually they didn't. That was the U.S. Moscow is pushing for an independent investigation from the OPCW and the United Nations to see what actually happened. This is from Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov. Meanwhile, both Russia and Iran have issued a demand for the United States to leave Syria following this obvious false flag attack in Idlib, followed by this ridiculous cruise missile attack on the Syrian airfield. And they're saying the U.S. is committing acts of war. They're committing war crimes. They're killing civilians in this harebrained, almost 6-year-long effort to get Assad out. And they're saying it's time for the United States to leave because they certainly don't have a UN resolution backing it up. There's been no congressional declaration of war against Syria. The government of Syria doesn't want them there. It's time for it to come to an end. Now then, over at the Washington Post, they've got a writer, Ed Rogers, and he's out there writing like crazy, saying this, the cruise missile attack was good, we should do more of them, and we, just haul off and absolutely make sure none of the Syrian military bases are ever going to work again. The part the Washington Post is leaving out is that this writer, Ed Rogers, is also a lobbyist for Raytheon, the company that makes the Tomahawk cruise missiles. So it's all pushing, for more money for Raytheon, more money for the war machine. And the corporate media is absolutely on board with all of this. Down in Iraq, Iraq is accusing Daesh, or whatever they're calling themselves this week, ISIS, ISIL, who the heck knows. They're accusing them of chemical weapons attacks on the Mosul troops. So we know these terrorist groups have these chemical weapons. There is no question they have these weapons. Now, getting on over to North Korea, things are getting very, very tense over there. And we're seeing these chest-thumping silverback gorilla articles out here, like this one, U.S. officials, North Korea tensions coming to a head. Mike Pence is out there saying the era of strategic patience is over. And they're talking, we've got to do something about it. We've got to do something about it. And we're seeing this article over in the Times of Israel saying, U.S. said preparing strike to utterly destroy North Korean nuclear program. Now, do you realize how dangerous that is? Because the U.S. is betting they know where all the nukes and missiles are. But I have no doubt by this point in time, North Korea is dispersing them all to new locations, spreading them out. We don't know where they all are. And an attack could trigger a retaliation. Story coming out of Huffington Post, striking North Korea could harm our key U.S. ally, China. China does not want to see a war on their border, but potentially nuclear one. So they're out there saying that this is a bad idea all around. Even Theresa May is saying, don't get all hot and bothered about North Korea. Meanwhile, Mike Pence has moved the goalposts. Last week they were saying if North Korea tests a nuclear weapon, we will attack. And North Korea did not carry out a test of a nuclear weapon. In point of fact, they may or may not have carried out a test of a missile. That story's kind of blurry. Some people are saying there was a test that failed miserably. Other sources are saying, no, it didn't happen. So somebody somewhere is lying. But Pence is now saying testing missiles is now unacceptable. If North Korea tests a missile, we're going to go in and attack. How dare they prepare to defend themselves against our most blessed invasion? Now, Vladimir Putin has moved defensive missiles to the North Korean border out of concern that Vladivostok is very, very close to that border and within range of North Korea's missiles. And if North Korea is attacked, probably what's going to happen is they're just going to fling weapons in all directions because they know they're going to lose anyway. So, everybody's getting primed for this thing. Now, apparently there were some Russian bombers that were flying in international airspace, but they were close to Japanese airspace, and Japanese fighter jets were scrambled up there to warn them away. Even though they were technically in international airspace, the Japanese planes went up there and warned them off. Got all these weapons from all these different countries making stink face at each other. This thing could easily spin out of control. And apparently China and Russia have now sent their warships to sort of pace and keep watch on the United States aircraft carrier, the Carl Vinson, and its battle group, which is moving toward North Korea. And adding fuel to the fire, the United States has now directed 2 additional aircraft carriers, the USS Ronald Reagan and the USS Nimitz, to join the flotilla, to join Trump's armada. So you have 3 aircraft carriers, their fleet auxiliaries, the Chinese and Russian ships keeping an eye on these U.S. forces. All it's going to take is one hothead to trigger the biggest naval battle since the Jutland. It's spinning completely out of control. They're not going to be able to keep this on script. If they think they're going to be able to follow a pre-planned script and have it all work out, it's not going to happen. It is simply not going to happen. Here in Hawaii, the state government is getting ready to update their contingency plans if there's an attack from North Korea. And it is not entirely far-fetched. North Korea's longest-range missiles can reach only 2 points in the United States of America. And that is the Aleutian Islands and right here in Hawaii. And I don't think Kim Jong-un has an issue with the polar bears. So that leaves Hawaii, because all of the communications for the entire Pacific Fleet go through this rock. You got the Pearl Harbor command centers, you got the command centers over in Diamond Head, you got antennas all over this rock. And it makes a very, very tempting target. Now, yes, the U.S. forces can still be controlled from the Takamo and Kneecap aircraft, but they don't have the capacity to run a tactical non-nuclear war. In fact, Takamo and Kneecap are designed primarily around a nuclear strike. But they're getting nervous here in Hawaii. I was just talking to our mail carrier, and she's scared. People are really waking up to just how dangerous this situation has become. Now, there's a story here that came out of Post News D2, and it is going along with the story that there was a missile test on Sunday that was botched, but it was disrupted by a U.S. program of cyber and electronic warfare designed to sabotage launches. And we know the U.S. has this capability because they've used it before on other countries. And that may be the reason North Korea is doing so many tests, because the U.S. is tampering with them, tinkering with them. Now, down in Turkey, they had their referendum yesterday to give Erdogan godlike powers, and the referendum passed by a single %, and immediately there were allegations of voter fraud. Basically, the parliamentary democracy has been dissolved. Erdogan is now a dictator of Turkey, and he can stay in office until 2029. And people were having their little cell phones, and they were catching voter irregularities, voting outside of stations, voters submitting multiple ballots. One video shows a voter inserting 5 envelopes into a ballot box. Now, the Turkish opposition party is demanding a recount because of how close this election was. And more than that, there's concern raised over the fact that some of the ballots did not bear the stamp that they're supposed to have to be a legitimate ballot. See, one of the ways that Turkey is trying to combat election fraud is an official ballot, after you vote, it gets a stamp. And apparently there was a huge amount of these unstamped ballots, which basically pushed Erdogan over the top. And so the opposition is calling for the results to be annulled over the fact that bogus ballots were counted. And Erdogan's response is now to send his thugs out beating up the opposition. Protesters are being beaten up, and he's already out there saying he's going to bring back the death penalty. You don't do what he tells you, you're going to die. Erdogan is starting to look like that character out of the predictions of Nostradamus, who sets fire to the world from the Middle East. And I'm not a big fan of Nostradamus. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but it is kind of eerie how it's all lining up. Now, the EU reporter for Turkey is warning that Turkish talks about joining the EU are going to be suspended because Erdogan got his unchecked powers. He's not a democracy, and one of the requirements that you're supposed to have to join the EU is at least nominally be a democratic system. But once again, we're seeing that all of these elections, all over the world, they're being rigged. They're being stolen. It's theater. It's like Stalin said, it is enough that people know there was an election. The people who vote decide nothing. The people who count the vote decide everything, and that's exactly what's going on now. Adding more fuel to the fire. Apparently, Chuck Schumer is now under investigation for possible connections to last year's failed coup against Erdogan in Turkey. And the investigation includes former CIA Director John Brennan and former CIA Deputy Director David Cohen. So that may get dragged into the light. And if the U.S. was behind that failed coup, then Erdogan is not our friend. And that's going to be another wild card there in the Middle East. And Erdogan is not the only person that's got election fraud around him. Apparently, Marine Le Pen is facing a devastating defeat because a computer error, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, sent out multiple ballots to some French voters who appear overwhelmingly to be wanting to vote for somebody other than Marine Le Pen. Something like 500,000 of these extra ballots went on out, and there is no mechanism to check if people are voting more than one time with these extra ballots. But it's a computer blunder. Really, just an honest mistake. Just a glitch. It's nothing suspicious here, you know, just because every single politician who seems opposed to globalism loses their election under suspicious circumstances, like Nigel Farage, the guy up in Norway. No reason to think that something crooked is going on here. Meanwhile, here in the United States of America, Judicial Watch has announced they've been doing a data survey of last year's election, and they're finding counties in 11 states that have more registered voters than actual eligible adult citizens. The evidence for massive election fraud last year is continuing to surface, all of it benefiting Hillary Clinton. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army has made the largest deployment of troops to Somalia since the Black Hawk Down incident. But they're all advisors. Nothing to worry about. They're just advisors. They're not going to be in real combat. And yes, I know, they said the same thing in Vietnam, and look how that ended up. John Rappaport has a very interesting article over in Rumor Mill News, Why Russia Has Become the #1 Target in the U.S. Press. And he's saying the same thing I've been saying all along. Russia is the biggest obstacle to the completion of the New World Order. China is #2. And before they can have the New World Order, before they can have the one world government, they're going to have to smash Russia and China. Of course, they won't do it themselves. They're going to send your children to do it. And by the way, you know, we were talking about that draft bill that's sitting in Congress, and for a while it said they were going to draft women into combat roles, and then there was a huge hue and cry, and they said, all right, we'll take out the part about women being drafted into combat roles. That has now been put back in. At the first big bang, I guarantee you that is going to go to the floor of the Congress, and it will pass. Now, top U.S. official, Lieutenant General, McMaster, is over in Pakistan, and saying that Washington is going to take a tougher stance with Islamabad. So it's not enough that we're mired in all these swamps in Afghanistan and Iraq, in Syria and Libya and Yemen and all these other places, and Somalia too. Yeah, let's add another one onto the pile here. The more war, the better. Story out of Sputnik News. The world is being held hostage by American military madness, and that really is exactly what it is. Our military are drunk on the power of their weapons, and unfortunately it looks like Donald Trump is drunk on the power he has to launch those weapons. Looking at his reaction after that cruise missile strike into Syria, he's acting like a little boy who just found his father's gun. And it is madness. And I think the world is saying enough is enough is enough here. Over at counterpunch.org, they have a very good article. America must start looking how to end all the wars it has started. Because if you look at all the wars we've had over the last 16 years, the U.S. and its allies started them all. I dare anybody to point to a map of the United States of America and show where we have been attacked by any of these nations we're bombing right now. We're going to take a break here for commercials. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here now, along with Theresa May and all these other people out there. Russia is now basically warning the United States against any Syria-style actions in North Korea. And one thing we ought to keep in mind is the U.S. could go on into North Korea and use a nuclear weapon and then claim the resulting radiation proves they've hit North Korea's nuclear arsenal blah, 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 blah. Now, Donald Trump is out there justifying the strikes and the military buildup and saying, frankly, we have no choice. Yeah, we do have a choice, and we voted that choice, and Trump has betrayed the will of the people. The American people do not want war. The American people are sick and tired of war. We've been at war constantly for the last 16 years, and it has impoverished the nation, made us hated around the world, and it's all to make already rich bankers richer than they already are. All right, we're going to take some phone calls. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Hi, Mike. Hey, I know you got callers that are still on the Trump train, but I just want to ask them, how much more are you going to give him? You know, I mean, when the missiles are going, when the mushroom clouds are, how much more is people going to take for people to realize it's over for us? He's been captured, sold out, whatever. He's not coming back to our side. That's what I'm trying to say. The wall's never going to build if we make it that far. It's not going to fix anything, Mike. It's over. He's been captured.
Yeah, at this point, I think anybody who's still defending Donald Trump is either a public relations agent, propagandist, or they are that unfortunate, tragic class of human beings that can never admit that they were wrong. And I'm not part of that. I admit it. I was wrong to support Trump, except that I was supporting Trump primarily to keep Hillary out of the White House, because I think the mushroom clouds would have already bloomed by now had Hillary actually won. But in any event, you're correct. This is not the president. This is the system as a whole. If you look how much money the U.S. government spends on the machinery of war, it is a warrior nation, and it always has been. And unfortunately, they solve their problems, their self-created problems, with a war. Every time they get the economy into a hopelessly tangled mess, they get into a world war to get out of it. Crash of 1907, World War I. Crash of 1929, World War II. Crash of 2008. And here we are on the actual brink.
What people don't realize, this country has become militaristic. I know people just can't accept that. It's militaristic and it's decadent, and just like Rome, and people need to come to Jesus moment. Hey, Mike, I gotta ask you this: what happens if North Korea unloads on South Korea and Japan? The economy will crash around the world, pretty much, right?
Pretty much.
There you go.
The only way the U.S. can get into North Korea and not cause a ton of collateral damage is to literally go in there with nukes and absolutely flatten the place. And believe it or not, during the first Korean War, which technically never really ended, and the U.S. did not win that one, I think it was General Douglas MacArthur was urging the use of nuclear weapons on North Korea. And again, if you look at the history of that Korean War, the North Koreans took an incredible amount of punishment and never surrendered. And anybody who thinks that North Korea is going to be a pushover, they're dreaming. It's going to be another Vietnam.
They have a real army. I just want to let people know. I mean, they're not messing around. North Korea is a tough bunch of something like the likes of modern America hasn't seen in a long time, and be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, what are we going to invade these countries with? All these liberal snowflakes coming out of the college, who need safe spaces and Play-Doh and everything?
Hey, Mike, MacArthur never realized if he would have used nukes, wouldn't all the radiation head into the South of Korea?
Yeah, and Japan. And if they use nukes now, the current wind patterns are the radioactivity will go over South Korea, Japan, and unfortunately here as well, and we're already dealing with Fukushima. All right, we got to let you go,
yeah,
Justin.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, we'll be right back with another phone call. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take another phone call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Hey, Mike. One thing, as far as the draft goes, are they really that stupid? I talk to a lot of young people, and they're a lot more informed. We're talking millennials and Generation Z. And also, I get most of my news on the internet and look at the comments and everything like that. most of these young people are not into the mainstream news. They don't get their news from fake news networks.
Yeah.
They get it from the internet. They get it from a lot more truthful people like you even. And I'm telling you, they start a draft. They think the riots during the Vietnam War were bad. This could take down the whole U.S. government if they dared to do this. Not only that, 18-year-olds vote now. Did not vote during the Vietnam War. And that could change the whole, if we continue to have votes, that could really change things also.
Voting doesn't seem to change anything. I mean, we voted for Donald Trump to stop this rush toward World War III, and we're still getting it. In fact, I'm looking at this article I just put up at the website. This is out of Macedonia Online saying, has Trump lost control of the Pentagon? And they go on down how the Pentagon has basically refused Donald Trump's lead, and they're coming back with ultimatums and threats. And again, this dovetails with the information that I was getting, saying that Trump has been told by the deep state, the war is going on regardless of anything you do, and all you can decide is if you're going to remain as president or not. Because if you don't go along with the war agenda, you will not be president much longer. And, you know, it is very alarming to see the military-industrial complex apparently usurping the president's authority to make war. Are you there? Mark? I think we lost Mark. Okay, can we switch over to James in Arizona? James in Arizona, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how's it going? I wanted to talk about Korea, and I think your last caller was saying how people think that Korea is going to be a pushover and everything. I think Korea could be our, like, Operation Barbarossa / Stalingrad type moment. Because he's right. Everybody on these comment sections are saying, you know, Korea is easy, it's a pushover, they have no morale. You know what I mean? Like the same thing that people were saying about Iraq before we got in there. And then your last caller, maybe he's right. If they do bring in the draft, it's over. It is over. Because you see that PSYOPs in Berkeley, you know, what are those protesters? Do they really want, not just Trump protesters, but the ones who are on Trump's side, do they really want a war? Do they really want to fight each other as Americans, and then whoever American is left are going to be sent off to the war to die anyways? Like, do they really want to fight their countrymen? You know, they really need to look at this. You know, the rockets going off in Syria, which cost tens of millions, and then this one bomb in Afghanistan, which cost tens of millions. That money could be used on us.
The Moab is $16 million.
Over $15 million.
Yeah.
Just not like that. And then they get mad. They get mad when we ask for free health care, or when we ask for, you know, Meals on Wheels, or for, you know, they get mad at us and saying we're the ones who are asking for too much.
I just want to see the American people be getting, you know, decent meals here. I mean, if we have a single American anywhere in this country sleeping in an alley and eating out of a trash dumpster, this government has no business spending our money on weapons of war or handing it to foreign governments. That's my opinion right now. The government has failed the American people. It's involved in all the rest of the world politics, and it's ignoring and neglecting the American people who basically are the walking wallet for all of this.
Exactly, Mike. You're right. And I'm going to leave you with one last comment. I was in Iraq in 2007, and trying to go down a road that's filled with IEDs is really going to mess up your mindset. It's really going to mess up your mental state, you know, if you do that on a daily basis. And these kids who are in college and they've never seen that, even the 18, 20-year-olds, let's not send them over there, okay? Let's not send them to deal with that type of stuff, because you can't fix a broken mind. You can't fix it.
No, you can't. Yeah. And again, going all the way back to The Art of War by Sun Tzu, right in the front of the book, he lists the things that a ruler must have to prevail in war, one of which is a military that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will fight fiercely and, if necessary, die in that war. And you must have a civilian population that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will bear the hardships war brings even to the victorious side. And our government has neither one of those. The civilian population knows these wars are not morally right or just, and we're sick and tired of the hardships we've had to suffer under for the last 16 years.
Exactly, Mike. Well, thank you, Mike. I love what you're doing. You're doing a very good job. May God bless you. May you have a good day, and may you have a good rest of the week, okay?
All right, thank you very much for that. Getting on back to the news here. Apparently, Israel is now flying airplanes over Gaza farm fields, dropping herbicides. In other words, they're poisoning the crops, and they've done it 4 times so far this year. And apparently, so far, 840 acres of crops were destroyed. Now, if that isn't a war crime, I don't know what is. But that's what Israel is doing. They're destroying the food supply inside Gaza. So that means we're going to get all this stuff about anti-Semitism all over the media and, oh, Hitler, Nazis, and all the rest of that, followed by a bottle rocket fired out of Gaza into an empty field in Israel, followed by yet another major bombing of Gaza. Now, getting into the world of politics, corruptions, and cover-up, apparently Lois Lerner has asked the judge hearing the class action lawsuit against her filed by all these organizations that were targeted by the Internal Revenue Service. She wants the court records sealed because she's afraid that, she's being put into emotional distress by the fact that Americans are very angry with her. And she wants a safe space and she wants the records sealed. No, I'm afraid that doesn't work that way. Because when you were over there working at the IRS, what you were doing is a public event, and we, the public, have a right to know what you were doing, and more importantly, why you were doing it. And so at this point, it seems like she's not even worried about whether she's going to win or lose the class action lawsuit. She just doesn't want it getting out to the public. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of people have been talking about Jared Kushner. Somebody wrote in saying that Kushner is sort of Trump's Rasputin, which I think is insulting to Rasputin. But apparently, California Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu, in an interview on MSNBC, said Kushner's security clearance ought to be revoked because he continues to refuse to disclose his numerous contacts with foreign officials. And Kushner appears to be, one of the prime, if not the prime cheerleader for more war on these countries in the Middle East. And Lerner isn't the only person who's out there trying to rig the court system for her. Apparently, Britain's Attorney General has intervened to try and block Tony Blair being brought into court over the Iraq War. And it's a private case brought by General Abdul Wahid Shanan Ribat, former Chief of Staff of the Iraq Army, and basically saying Tony Blair has to be prosecuted for the crime of aggression because the attack on Iraq was based on a lie that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. And the Attorney General of Great Britain is out there saying, well, we don't need to talk about that. It's okay to lie to start wars. I mean, look, everybody's doing it these days. They're all doing it, Mommy, lying to start wars. That makes it okay. All right, let's take some more phone calls. Rick in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mike. I think that, this whole thing is just Trump's out of the entertainment industry, and this is entertainment. There isn't going to be a shot fired. Korea's got an army, and it is ferocious. I mean, I've talked to people from Korea. They can walk through a forest without making noise. This is just, and as far as them having nuclear weapons, I mean, I question that. I mean, during World War II, we couldn't even make our missiles fly straight, let alone the Koreans and the Chinese. I don't know how they're doing it.
We still can't. Remember that embarrassment with the Tomahawk? Great Britain was test firing a Tomahawk, and it went the complete wrong direction, headed for the U.S.
Yeah. But
and in this
nobody's going to start a war with North Korea. It's not going to happen.
I beg to disagree. Okay. The people who want the war, they don't think in those terms. They just start out saying, America's never lost a war, and we're just going to go on in it. And even with all the recent failures and quagmires and stalemates, they're still out there thinking war is the only option, because they've gone down this agenda of dragging the world back to Bretton Woods too far. They can't turn around. If anybody got up and said, these wars are a bad idea, let's call them on off, the U.S. economy would implode in 15 seconds flat.
Yeah, well, I can see Korea going over the DMZ, but I just don't see our soldiers charging up the hill. And that ain't going to happen. They're going to drop their guns and run like the Iraqis did. They're not going to take on these people. It might be a push-button war, but what is that? You got to take the territory. So who's going to take the territory?
You're absolutely right about that. That was the lesson of Vietnam. You cannot win a war from the air.
That's why I don't think there's going to be a war.
No, there's going to
there's
going to be a lot of bombs dropping and cruise missiles, and there's going to be a lot of radioactivity. Of course, what we're hearing is they're not planning to just invade North Korea. They're planning a decapitation strike against Kim Jong-un and his leadership directly. And that is a very dangerous precedent to set, because it justifies other countries doing decap strikes on our government. And even though I'm disappointed with Donald,
buy your auto parts soon.
And even though I'm
buy your auto parts soon for Hyundai, and they're going to take it.
Rick, may I please complete the thought?
Go ahead.
Even though I am disappointed in Donald Trump, and I see the administration taking us in a dangerous direction, I think a decapitation strike on our administration would trigger a nuclear exchange all over the world. And so it's a very reckless situation. You know something to keep in mind? Every time two countries go to war, both sides are convinced they're going to win it, and obviously half of them are wrong. And this time it may be our country that is in the wrong. It's certainly morally in the wrong and militarily in the wrong. And again, our Pentagon and our leadership may be victims of our own track record of success or their own overconfidence. There's a lot of hubris on display out there.
Okay, I'll give you 3-to-1 odds on $100 that there's not a shot fired within 6 months. Want to take that bet? Audience is a witness. 3-to-1 odds. I give you 300. You give me 100.
My gambling budget is only about 25 cents.
Yeah, well, it means you're not confident. You think I'm right.
No, I don't think you're right. I think you're absolutely wrong. And again, I don't even know if we're going to be here in 6 months' time. If this thing gets out of control, we're going to get hit here in Hawaii, and that's something that Claire and I are having to deal with. Yeah, Rick, thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I spent time in Korea. Last time I was there was 95, but I spent a tour in 95 there. I was a major, an infantry major. We estimated they had 2 or 3 nukes even then. That was under Clinton. But the thing is, we only have 1 division there. So it's the 2nd, and the 2nd Infantry Division. Back at that time, we were pulling it back from the border. It used to be right up on the DMZ. Because I think I alluded to you before, they have so much artillery, we wanted our guys to be out of reach of their artillery, because they could have been pulverized by them, and the casualties would have been sky high. So we pulled our guys out of range of even their long artillery, which, by the way, can reach Seoul. They could put about 1,000 tubes on Seoul. But at any rate, what they won't do, and this guy who was just there, they are ferocious. The terrain there is very hilly and very defensive and friendly. But they got no mobility at all. They can't come out of their holes. So the first part of our war plan, by the way, which was back then, was 90 days before we can get enough. With 1 division, you can't advance. You rely on the South Koreans, who, by the way, are very capable. And mostly we were there to keep the South Koreans from attacking North Korea. Honestly, they're very capable, and they have an economy 3 or 4 times larger than everything else. Population is larger than North Korea's, but North Korea, their infantry leg, they can't come out of their hills. If they did, they'd be pulverized by air power. They can't maneuver at all.
You know, so what you're describing there is a country that is concerned with defense rather than offense. And that is the reason for North Korea or any other country to be developing nuclear weapons, to deter an invasion. There's nothing about North Korea's military buildup that suggests they're getting ready to invade anybody. As you say it yourself, they're building defensive fortifications, and they're basically protecting their border. Their concern was an invasion from the south, or obviously
right,
now
Mike.
from the United States.
And not only that, they don't have the motorization or the mechanization. They can't advance or anything like that. They have no air force whatsoever. They're locked in. Consider them, Mike, like the Japanese on Okinawa.
Yes.
You know, willing to fight to the death, dug in with, artillery and all that, but unable to maneuver whatsoever. But we could inflict a lot of casualties, but we couldn't advance on them anyways with one division. What we could do is do strikes. They have very highly capable, by the way, special forces are. They're tough as nails, the North Koreans. But what we could do is do helicopter insertions on a small scale all over, and they'd be hard pressed to do much about that. But they're locked into place, and they're really no threat.
Okay, but that was also the situation in Vietnam. North Vietnam did not have much of an air force until Russia started sending the MiG-23s. They didn't have the mechanization. They lived in the tunnels, and still they kicked us out because they're very, very tough people. And something you need to remember, when you're talking about invading another country, you are fighting people who are fighting to protect their homes and their loved ones right within eyesight against an invading army that is pretty much there for a paycheck. And that gives them a psychological advantage as well. Okay.
Well, what I'm saying, Mike, is we can't invade them. We cannot invade them.
No, I
understand.
understand.
It'll take us 90 days to get troops over there.
All right. We got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we get back to the phones here, apparently a Black Hawk helicopter has suffered what the Army calls a hard landing at the Breton Bay Golf Course and Country Club in Maryland. Of course, looking at the photos, it wasn't a hard landing. It was a complete re-kit. And I'm waiting for the White House spokesslug to come on out and say, North Korea shot that down. The invasion is on. Putin did it. It's Putin with his shotgun shot down our Black Hawk helicopter. All right, back to the phones. Kathleen in Paris, bonjour. Aloha, what is on your mind?
Yeah, bonjour. Okay, I'm thinking about the fact that, like you're always saying, that how many times do we have to be lied to, and then, but you imply that it's this government. What if it's like government? It's the state or the statism that is not possible.
I'm sorry, I don't understand exactly what you just said, but it is certainly not just the United States government that is lying to its people, although they seem to be the world champions. If you go to my website, up in that top gray menu, there's an article of the liars, by the liars, and for the liars, which goes through history detailing some of the major whoppers that have been told to people by their rulers, like Ramses the Great, the Catholic Church, and so forth and so on. But my concern here is that right now we are in this swamp full of lies that is leading us to a new world war.
I'm talking about the idea of statism, of having a state. I guess what I'm thinking is maybe Ron Paul's libertarian freedom. Is there any way for everybody to be free? I mean, he talks, his Liberty Channel. I don't know how it would work, but
well,
how does libertarian? How is
it is possible?
Libertarianism.
Okay, let me get in here for a second because we're almost out of time. It is certainly possible to design a government that works for the nation and its people. It's been done many times in history, including back there in 1776. The problem is power attracts the very political power attracts the very sort of people who should not be allowed to have it. And each succeeding generation of new politicians tries to warp the system to benefit themselves at the expense of the nation and its people. And that is why eventually all nations will collapse, whether it's the Soviet Union or ancient Rome and soon to be the United States of America. This is not the nation that is described in that Constitution in the Bill of Rights. So it's possible to have a government that is taking care of the people in the nation. It's possible to have freedom as long as the people are vigilant against their politicians playing fast and loose with the rules. And that, by the way, is the very reason the Founding Fathers gave the American people that Second Amendment, to deal with misbehaving politicians. But unfortunately, through complacency with the American people, the corruptors of our society have gotten away with changing this country into something that's very ugly and was certainly not intended by the Founding Fathers. Primarily, that private central bank. Okay.
Yeah.
Kathleen, got to let you go. Got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And as one of the earlier callers alluded to, there has been a lot of violence back up at Berkeley. Pro-Trump supporters, anti-Trump supporters rioting. Apparently the anti-Trump supporters were throwing M80 firecrackers into the Trump supporters crowd. And the M80 is a very, very powerful firework. It can cause physical harm. And apparently the police just sort of sat there and did absolutely nothing, just letting it get out of control. And you have to wonder why. I mean, the election's pretty much over at this point. If you want to protest something, protest against the wars, not against Trump himself. Trump is just a figurehead. The Pentagon is ignoring him. Congress is ignoring him. We all agree the wars are bad. Let's stop beating each other up and say we're going to protest against the wars. Especially you young people. If you do not take a stand against the wars, you are going to be killed and crippled in them, because they are talking about bringing back the draft. Trump just appointed a new head to the Selective Service System. That's not something you do for an agency that isn't really doing anything. So they're cranking that one up. Okay, let's talk about the economic news a little bit. Despite his campaign rhetoric, all of a sudden Donald Trump is getting very friendly with Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. And apparently Trump is saying that Federal Chair Janet Yellen is not toast after all. We're doing okay here. We understand that Trump is already fundraising for his 2020 run. He's got about $13 million so far. They're claiming it's from small online donations, and I got to tell you right now, I imagine those have pretty much stopped at this point. So now Donald Trump is going to be dependent on corporate money if he's going to run for a second term, and the sellout is just going to get worse. It really is. Russia and China have activated their alternative to the SWIFT system. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, SWIFT is the electronic transaction system. Goes all over the globe. It connects all the banks together. When you send money from one bank to another bank, especially in another country, it goes through SWIFT. And the United States has weaponized SWIFT. If you don't do what we tell you to do, we will disconnect you from SWIFT. See the power we have over the global economic system. Well, with very little fanfare, Russia and China's SWIFT alternative is up and running. And basically saying Russia now has its own global payment system. There is now an alternative for those who don't want to be abused by SWIFT anymore. And that is one of the major reasons why they are ramping up war against Russia and China. Because the United States has foolishly allowed its manufacturing to decline over the last 30 years. What America makes these days is overpriced junk that will not last. Products that are actually harmful and dangerous, and they try and force them on other countries with treaties like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And nobody wants our GMO agriculture. And the only thing that is holding the U.S. economy up at this point is forcing the rest of the world to use the U.S. Federal Reserve note for cross-border trade and banking, and countries are turning away from it. And that is the ultimate objective of this new world war, to drag the world back to the Bretton Woods Agreement, where everybody's cross-border trade and banking uses the U.S. dollar, off of which the U.S. charges interest on it. Or they get real manufactured goods and agricultural produce in exchange for boxes of ink and paper. That's what this is really all about. Now, interesting story coming out of Investment Watch blog. And the headline is Conspiracy versus Fact. How much gold is in the world? And it is a very important question to ask because nobody really seems to know. The estimates are all over the world. Now, we're not talking about the gold that's still in the ground somewhere. We're talking about mined, refined investment gold. How much of it is there? Where is it? Are there secret gold stashes? And this is of critical importance because, in theory, to set the price of gold, you have to know how much is out there versus the demand. And this is of paramount importance to those who've invested in gold futures contracts, because there's a growing body of evidence that these contracts have been overprinted in order to help suppress the price of gold. And there may be more than $1 trillion exposure in paper gold contracts for which there is no gold. And we're already at a stage right now where, as these contracts come due, they are either rolled over or they are settled for the cash value of the gold that would have been delivered plus a premium for taking the paper instead of the physical gold. But more and more of the holders of these contracts are starting to demand the physical gold, and there seems to be a shortage. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And the fact of the matter is, we talked about this a few years back. I did a couple of episodes of History Channel's America's Book of Secrets. And the episode that seemed to have the most impact around the world was the gold conspiracy, where we talked about how these bullion depositories and these private central banks were playing fast and loose with other people's gold. And that's why when countries like Germany demanded their gold back from the New York Fed and the Bank of France, they got the big stall. Oh, it's going to be years before we can get your gold back to you. And what they have sent back to Germany so far is not the original stamped and numbered bars that were sent there. Now, a bullion depository is like a safety deposit box. You should get back exactly what you put in there, not something similar. And the gold that was returned to Germany wasn't as pure. In fact, it was pretty badly adulterated. So we don't really know how much gold is out there. Are there secret gold stashes? I'm sure there's a lot of gold in private hands, but we're looking at the possibility, just like they did in India, confiscation, outlawing of private gold. India, only a few years ago, was one of the highest per capita consumers of gold for jewelry and for investment, and now it's been turned completely around. Now, over in India, they're in panic mode. India is trying to go cashless. They're the test platform. And the cash is starting to run out. More than 90% of India ATMs are now empty, and it's creating civil unrest. People don't want their money permanently trapped in the bank, and for a very good reason. Article coming out of Economic Policy Journal. The IMF is out there admitting once the society goes cashless, they'll be able to go to negative interest rates on your savings account. Never mind the fees they're charging you on your checking account. You will be forced to keep your extra wealth in the bank, and the bank is going to help themselves to a little tiny bit of it. Once there is no longer a portable store of value that you can have in your home, in your pocket, in the mayonnaise jar that's buried out by the pineapple plantation. These banks are all in trouble. Article coming out of Investment Watch blog. They're still trying to save the Monte Paschi Bank. It's the oldest bank in the world. It was founded in 1472. And the EU Commission is looking at, they're going to have to bail it out. They're going to have to bail it out. And there's something to keep in mind. A bailout isn't really a bailout. It's just another loan. It simply drags the debt slavery out into the future. Here in the United States, things are getting very, very difficult for all those millions of unemployed people that the U.S. government hopes you're not paying attention to. Over in Pennsylvania, their unemployment compensation system is on the verge of collapse. And people who've just lost their job in Pennsylvania can't get the jobless benefits they're supposed to. And remember, those jobless benefits are supposed to be paid for by taxes from the employer. A lot of people don't understand. When you go to work for a company, the governments, plural, are not just taking money out of your paycheck. Your employer has to pay taxes over and above what they pay you, part of which funds the unemployment system. In fact, if you add it all together, the governments are making more off your labor than you do. And apparently some people who've lost their jobs in Pennsylvania have had to wait as long as 8 weeks just to get a single jobless benefits check. Another article coming out of Investment Watch blog, man wants to withdraw 80% of the money in the bank. The bank says no. And this is being reported by Jim Rickards, saying, you know, if you only have $100 in the bank, they'll give it to you. But if you have several $1,000s and you want it, they won't give it to you in cash. They will only give it to you in a cashier's check, which has to be taken to another bank. They don't want you to have your money in your pocket because they can't play their games with it. And like I just said, the IMF has admitted the goal of a cashless society is to lock your money in the bank, at which point the bank is going to help themselves to it. Route 21 is getting ready to shutter nearly 400 stores nationwide. The retail apocalypse is continuing apace. The retailers are trying to blame online sales, but a lot of online sales companies are not doing very well either. Amazon's doing great, no question about that. A lot of other online sellers aren't doing as well because of the wealth inequality. For an economy to be healthy, currency must be flowing freely at all levels of society into all necessary sectors of investment. Under the fascism that we have been living under for years, all the wealth is now concentrated very tightly at the top. And there aren't enough money junkies to go around to all the shopping malls and buy all the retail products to keep the consumer economy going. And that's why retail is locking up. The customers don't have any money. People are living paycheck to paycheck. Remember the housing bubble of 2008? Wall Street learned nothing from it. You know why? You got to pay for it. You, the American taxpayer, got to bail Wall Street out of the disaster of the mortgage-backed security fraud. And nobody on Wall Street went to jail. And having not had to learn any bitter lessons about this sort of behavior, we now have a new bubble, the car loan bubble, which is going on right now. And they're out there trying to get people to buy cars. And admittedly, the prices are really, really good. If you actually had money, now would be a great time to buy a car. And nobody wants to borrow any more money. They're not sure they can pay it back. Now they're starting to have car loans with longer payment terms than the life expectancy of the car itself. Up until recently, the deal has been that you will have a 5-year loan for the car, which, because of planned obsolescence, is designed to pretty much fall apart at 5 years. Now they're selling those 5-year lifespan cars with car loans that go to 8 and 10 years. You can see what's going to happen down the road there. Saudi Arabia, as the cheap oil cuts into their economy, they're starting to neglect their infrastructure projects. Well, welcome to our world. Take a look around at the crumbling infrastructure in this country, in this wartime economy. Bridges are collapsing. Highways are having to be closed. Rural roads are being allowed to go back to gravel. Look around at the state of the country right now and ask yourself if you're getting value for money from this government. Or do we need a cash for clunkers law where we take our current, bloated, inefficient government, send it over to the junkyard to get crunched up into a metal coffee table, and we all get a check for $50,000 to buy a new, smaller, more efficient government. I think it's time that we do this. One area of the economy that's doing really well, there's a boom in the building of underground bunkers. Prepper bunkers, fallout shelters are back in fashion. I remember during the Cold War, fallout shelters were everywhere. And some of them were built really well. Some of them were ridiculous. There were a lot of scammers out there. I remember seeing an ad one time for what was basically a crate covered with aluminum paint where you could shelter yourself from a nuclear explosion. Do you remember that film we were all shown in school with Bert the Turtle, duck and cover? And they were showing all the things you could do to protect yourself from a nuclear bomb, like get under your desk at school or pull the picnic table, a picnic cloth over your head, none of which would actually work. And they knew it wasn't going to work. The purpose of that film was to brainwash children into thinking nuclear war was survivable. Looking back on it now, it's laughable. Oh, and by the way, I got a lot of email from a lot of people who looked at that Atomic Cafe documentary, and they were absolutely stunned and shocked to see what had really been going on back there. Okay, now getting on to immigration and refugees here. Over in Sweden, finally somebody has got some common sense. Spokespeople for the trucking industry are pushing back on these Swedish feminist government suggestion that the way to end terrorism is to ban trucks, which have been used in the truck bombings. And the trucking industry is saying, no, let's ban the terrorists and let the truckers go on doing what they do for a living. But can you believe the ridiculousness of that idea? Oh, the terrorists are using truck bombs, we'll ban trucks. Apparently, acid attacks are on the rise in London. Multiculturalism is failing. People don't want their cultures forcibly joined together. All over Europe, and people are really, really pushing back on it. And getting on back to the disappointment of Donald Trump, remember during his campaign, he said he was going to stop all the Syrian refugees coming to the United States of America because inevitably some of them were going to be terrorists who were going to do harm to the United States of America because of the harm the United States is doing to Syria. And he's not only reversed himself, he has doubled the number of Syrian refugees being allowed into the United States of America. What a complete betrayal and sellout of everybody who supported him. Okay, let's talk about United Airlines and why these people don't seem able to learn from their mistakes. Apparently, the culture of passenger abuse, which, by the way, let's be fair, it is not just United Airlines. A lot of other people and a lot of other airlines are getting bad treatment. You get groped for check-in, you get dragged down the aisle for check-out. It's really not a pleasurable experience anymore. But apparently, there was a United Airline flight that was half empty. And apparently there was this couple who were on their way to their wedding, and there was somebody in their aisle who wanted to stretch out and get some sleep. Since the plane was half empty, the couple changed seats. And then the flight attendants came on back and said, you can't sit there, that's not your assigned seat. And they had the couple removed from the airplane. For doing this, we're going to move and let the other person actually stretch out and get some sleep. They were trying to do this guy a favor. And they got thrown off the plane. And by the way, there's all kinds of jokes and memes about United Airlines. They're going to be years getting their brand identity back from this one. And you would think that they would be out there saying, got to be very, very cool. Now, supposedly United has just now announced a policy where already boarded and seated passengers will not be removed. If they have to make room on a plane, it'll be done at the gate, which means they'll be dragging you through the airport. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. I'm looking at the Fox News feed, and they're out there with this, Trump is saying North Korea's got to behave. I'm sorry, but just who is it who has their military weapons floating off of whose coast? And I think it's important to understand something. Look at every country the United States has bombed, invaded, drone struck, regime changed over the last 16 years. What is the one common factor in all of them? They didn't have weapons to deter invasion. The U.S. is basically whooping on countries who cannot fight back. And that's why they're angry at North Korea. North Korea wants to have the weapons to deter an invasion. As that other caller mentioned, if you look at how North Korea's defenses are organized, they're all defensive, not offensive. It's ridiculous here. All right, let's take a phone call. Mo in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mo, are you there? Mo, are you?
Hello?
There you are. You're on the air.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying I'm trying to keep it light a little bit because, I mean, I'm like you. I'm not, in the sights of, Kim Jong, whatever his name is, the Pillsbury Doughboy stand-in. But, it's just so bizarre. My thinking is this. Why, the only thing, there's some things that are just, you're so right about just about everything. I mean, before I think something, you pretty much say it. It's like, you get it, your mind's free. But, one thing I don't understand, if Trump is, the deep state or whatever you want to call it, the neocons, the trilateral, all that stuff, if they really, have him, which I believe they do, this guy could go on national TV like his Twitter thing but he could do his fireside chat every night. Yeah. He's the perfect guy for that and get the American people, come on, let's go. This is our last shot, bro. Am I right?
Yeah, but again, like I said, this information I had coupled with this article about the Pentagon, we seem to have a third person on the line. The war agenda is moving forward, and all Donald Trump can do is continue as president or not. And if he were to try and go public on any of this stuff, he could be assassinated on the spot. They probably showed him the Zapruder film from Dallas, Texas, and said, see, we can kill presidents who don't go along with the agenda and get away with it. And Trump may just be afraid of that. They may have threatened his family. There's enough pressure there. One more thing about North Korea that everybody needs to remember. They're one of the few countries on earth that do not have a privately owned central bank. The North Korean government makes its own money. Horrors! Horrors! Of course we must invade them.
No, that's true. And one other thought, Michael, get your thinking on this. There is some I don't know. Do you know who Bix Ware is?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah. He's the one who's out there saying, buy silver because there's a lot of hidden gold. We got plenty of gold. I don't believe that.
No, I don't either.
But I just want to. I kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay. For some reason, the phone line keeps cutting in and out. The problem is we don't know how much gold there is. We do know there's a lot of silver. But again, we're dealing with an economic system that is rooted in the fraud of the private central banks. And we know they're manipulating the stock market. They're trying to conceal the true scale of the unemployment problem. We're not getting good, accurate information from anybody in the financial sector with which we could make any kind of a reasonable conclusion. All we have are these questions. But certainly the gold traders are acting like they're dealing with a shortage.
Yeah, well, they certainly try to grab it in every invasion that we make.
After they went into Libya, the goal for the Golden R, nobody knows where that went. Got to let you go, Mo. We got to take a break for commercials.
Thanks, Michael.
We'll be back. Let's have some more phone calls. 800-313-9443. Hello, America. Welcome back to the show here. We got a bunch of calls waiting on the line. Before I get to them, though, a couple of things here. Apparently, the riots in Berkeley are continuing, and the corporate media is saying that this is all about Donald Trump releasing his tax returns, and Trump is out there saying, look, the election is over. I don't think either story is accurate, because over the weekend, I saw another story about how there was a movement among liberals to withhold their taxes this year in protest over the wars, and I imagine a lot of conservatives are going to join them in on that one. So this isn't about the tax returns. It's about the fact that we're not getting the government we voted for. Therefore, why should we pay for it? Now, getting on back to the idea that we're being lied to about the economic news, story coming out of RINF.com, consumer confidence grows, beats analysts' predictions. This is from the University of Michigan. And this is a rah-rah to try and get you down to the shopping malls and buy things. The consumers are confident again. Everything is hunky-dory. And if you believe that one, I have some of Assad's sarin gas to sell you. Let's go back to the phones here. Peter in Dallas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You're losing a little weight. You're looking thinner.
Could you repeat? Hello? Yeah, could you repeat that? We've got a bad connection.
I said you're losing weight. You look a little thinner.
I've lost about 80 pounds now.
Well, you look thinner the last time I looked.
Claire says the same thing.
But maybe you can clarify something for me. When they talk about the Fed's balance sheet, right now I guess it's $4 trillion, and they bought up all the bad loans from the banks so that they could continue to operate. Now, they sort of implied that those assets belong to the banks. They don't belong to the bank. All those bad loans belong to the U.S. citizen, right?
Yeah, they're going to. Yeah, they dumped them on the American people. That's what TARP was all about. Following the 2008 meltdown of the mortgage-backed security fraud, they passed that Troubled Asset Relief Program, which basically took over all that bad paper from the mortgage meltdown at taxpayer expense, and it's all worthless junk paper. For all we know, they used it up in the restrooms over there on the stock exchange. And they're going to do it again. Under fascism, the ordinary people are forced to pay for all the losses of business.
Well, when they say it's the Fed's balance sheet, that's really misleading. It should be the United States balance sheet.
It should. Well, again, the Federal Reserve is itself a privately owned bank. It's not really part of the government. It's no more federal than Federal Express. But unfortunately, because the Federal Reserve does have its tentacles into the Congress, they can basically soak the American taxpayer for whatever they need to keep their little Ponzi scheme going.
Well, yeah, okay, but I mean, calling it the Fed's balance sheet sort of implies that the banks are on the hook. The banks are off the hook.
That's right.
The Fed's balance sheet.
That's exactly right. We, the American people, are going to be forced to continue to make payments on the unpayable debt one way or the other. And it's all basically a scam. They've been running it in this country for a little over 100 years. They've been playing the same scam on the entire earth for 300 years. And people are finally waking up to it. And we're seeing more and more articles out there about why the Federal Reserve ought to be nationalized or ended. We're seeing all these other countries that are going back to value-based monetary systems because we can see that this creation of money out of thin air and lending it out at interest, it makes the bankers rich, the people poor, and inevitably leads to war after war after war after war.
So would you be in favor of a fixed money supply? The supply doesn't increase. It stays the same. If we become more efficient, prices go down? Or do you still think we need to be expanding the money supply?
Well, in theory, the ideal situation is the money supply or the commodity base under the money supply has to expand to keep pace with the growth of population because you're going to need that additional monetary supply to build additional housing, additional factories, additional stores, and so forth, which is why one of the reasons I've suggested that a new monetary system could be based on a unit of electricity. because as society grows, inevitably it's producing more electricity for its own needs. And if we had a currency that represented, for example, a kilowatt hour of electricity as a commodity base for the currency, then you've got a currency that can't be hoarded, can't be monopolized, it can't be inflated, and it will keep pace with population growth.
Well, why couldn't we just say that the currency is based on the economy? I mean, it's not. You can buy gold with it, or you can buy sneakers with it, or you can buy a car with it. It's basically what you can spend it on. I'm not sure why we have to make it on some specific thing. That you could say we have a powerful economy, so
that's what the Federal Reserve is doing now. That's why they're always trying to talk about the GNP but it's all fairy tale money. If it isn't anchored to something of tangible, known value, then the bankers there's no restriction on inflating it away, which is exactly what they've done ever since the Federal Reserve was created. A U.S. dollar today is worth about 6 cents of what a U.S. dollar was worth at the creation of the Federal Reserve. And so in order to hold
that's right. That leaves my point. Is the key thing about money is that they don't increase more and more and more of it. It's just the key thing is that it's stable. The whole idea with basing on gold is the amount of gold is fairly fixed.
The value of gold isn't fixed. There are gold mines out there. They're talking about actually mining the asteroid belt for gold now. Any commodity base is going to work. It doesn't have to be gold. It doesn't have to be silver. But you've got to tie the currency to a commodity with a universally recognized value in order to prevent the kind of abuses we saw under the Federal Reserve System.
Well, Spain, back when they took all the silver out of Mexico, and all of a sudden there was this abundance of silver in Spain, they went in, their economy crashed. And so again, I don't think it's so much the commodity as the quantity of money being stable. I'll leave you alone, Michael, but thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Jerry in Chicago. Jerry, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Okay, did we lose Jerry? All right, let's go to Fred.
Hi.
Jerry, are you there?
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to call me.
Okay, is this Sherry in Texas? Okay, who is on the line right now?
Well, I'm here.
Okay, and your name is?
Sherry in Texas.
Okay, you are Sherry in Texas. Okay,
yes.
What is on your mind?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Thanks. Yeah, it's going to be really very difficult and frustrating knowing that our government, the Pentagon, you said, right, is going forward with war with or without Trump. I can't say I'm surprised, but this is major. I mean, this is so major. Can Trump make this clear through tweets or something? I mean, how are we all going to get on board behind this if the mainstream media, are they going to mention this? I want to refer this information to my friends through, I don't know, if it can be read someplace. I can send them an article. People need to know, because we're going to have to hear people saying, oh, look, he's selling us out. And this sounds like he has no choice, which is kind of what I figured in the first place. It's either he goes or he goes along with it. And this is something I want everyone to know about, especially my kids.
We have a couple of articles linked to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. But you just need to open your eyes and realize that for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. Trump has reversed all of his campaign promises, and those of us who were trying to get Trump in there did so at least in part to derail the rush to a new world war, and yet it's still moving forward. And so a lot of people are still, they're asking legitimately, who's calling the shots over here? Even Russia is saying they're not sure who's actually running the country. If it's Donald Trump or the Congress or the Pentagon or AIPAC, they don't know who's really ultimately in charge, and that is a dangerous situation.
I'll check the website. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to back up to Jerry in Chicago. Jerry, aloha. Thank you for waiting. What is on your mind? Jerry, are you there? We seem to be having some problems with our phone system today.
Yeah, I don't know. His line is open, so...
All right, well, let's go to Fred in Missouri, then we'll come back to Jerry. Fred in Missouri, are you there?
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
I'm just going to make a couple points about what you had said a little bit earlier. The first one, in regard to the gold, I think you're absolutely right on about that. But there's a lot of evidence that we do have gold in the ground. And what that is maybe a finite number, but there's definitely a lot of gold in the ground still that can be used and to support the idea of what you're claiming about commodities. But there's a couple other things I just noticed that just seems to run me the wrong way. On this United Airlines thing, those people were put on another plane, and they were sent by United Airlines to their destination.
You're talking about the married couple?
Yes.
Okay, well...
And you know, I don't know, you know, if everybody's, you know, spinning this stuff or what. But when you mention the business about Trump and the Syrians, you failed to mention that the additional Syrians that was written in under Obama. And Trump really stepped up in front of this thing, trying to get this legislation through to stop these people before they got here. And it was the Ninth Circuit that stopped Trump. They got some pretty sharp lawyers coming up with all kinds of reasons why they could do this. So I really think, you know, on some of these issues, you know, Trump is probably wondering himself maybe why he took the job. But the reality of it is, a lot of us voted for Trump because we believe in the ideas. And, you know, I just think that when you make that statement, I think it should be clear that, you know, not everything that's out there is just red, green, and blue. I mean, it's just there's a lot of gray areas in this stuff.
Well, if you're seeing gray, it means you're not looking close enough. The reality is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is openly violating the law. The judges are trying to rewrite the law from the bench, and Donald Trump has every right to have the Attorney General actually go after them or have the Supreme Court overturn them. Again, it looks like he's just going along with the deep state. Now, going on back to the issue about the gold being in the ground, there is a lot of gold down there. But mining comes down to something called the unit cost of extraction, which is how much does it cost to get an ounce of gold out of the ground. And if it costs, if it costs more than that ounce is worth, then the mining operation stops because it's not making money. As long as the price of gold is artificially being kept low, there are a lot of gold mines which right now are sitting idle. When the price of gold starts to go on up, you're going to see those mines renew their operation. You're going to see more exploration. And you're going to see people who are going to be trying to come up with cool ways to, for example, refine the gold that's actually floating in seawater. Maybe come up with some sort of a graphene filter that filters it out. But there is
I don't have all the chemical ideas on this. The one thing I know a little bit about is what's going on in the Grand Canyon, and they've been very careful not to talk about it. But Rick Ware, he kind of jumped into that. He kind of gave some highlights of what they found and going back and looking at the newspaper articles, you know, at the turn of the century and everything. But it is amazing that they put this huge marine base at this end and they don't let anybody near it, you know. And I don't think they're making, you know, secret weapons or it's a UFO base. There's another reason there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here, and I guess we lost Jerry in Chicago, and we're going to go to Jim in Michigan. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Jim in Michigan.
Hey, Michael.
There you are. Okay.
Hey, I love your program, man. It's like I turn off all other programs and even listen to it, you know, the replays. So, anyways, great show. I was just thinking that we could probably rename Donald Trump's political affiliation to Hino.
Okay.
President in name only.
Could very well be. I mean, wouldn't be the first time in history that happened. If you look at the latter days of the Merovingian kings, they were little more than ceremonial figureheads. All the power was in the palace officials. Or even the last emperor of China. The last emperor of China, Aisinjiro Puyi, He was emperor in name only, and he went through all the ceremony, but the real power was with the palace officials until China basically took it all over.
Now, what do you think, Michael? And I know, trying to figure out what he's up to, because I called before on Trump, and I'm a Trump supporter. I was, at least until he went, off the deep end. But, if the Pentagon is not listening to him, Congress is not listening to him, I think the biggest problem we have as far as the American people, we don't really know what's going on.
That's true.
Do you think there's any chance? Do you think there's any chance that if Trump came and said, "I've been threatened by the Pentagon, I've been threatened by this person, that person, and this is what we have to do," because
they would say he's gone paranoid, invoke the 25th Amendment, and remove him from office, and send him to a mental institution.
Oh. I never even thought about it. Yeah, but you're probably right. But what I'm thinking of, if there's threatening the president, there could be, a reason for arresting people. But then they'd say he was a tyrant, So, yeah, it's like, damn if you do, damn if you don't. I just, I feel sorry for the guy.
I don't. He wanted the job.
I understand that. But, again, Again, I don't know what's going on with him because he's doing everything he said he wouldn't do. So, anyway, just God pray for us, because I hope, whether it's the Pentagon or whomever is behind all this, like you say, I have children, and I'm thinking, my goodness gracious, I don't want to be, have sea mushroom claws around my neighborhood. And I don't want to have to put up with the radiation and everything else. It's just going to destroy everything. So these people must be personally insane to even, contemplate the fact that we should have a nuclear war, because it's not going to be good.
Well, it's not going to be good for us, but the problem is our military high command and our politicians who have underground bunkers at the Greenbrier and Mount Weather, they think they can survive a nuclear war even if they lose it. And they'll just say, "Oh, we blew it," and they go down underground for 6 months to a year, and they come on out, and, "Oh, look at all the room we have now for our wonderful palaces." All right, we're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we finally got Jerry in Chicago back on the line, hopefully with a working phone connection. Jerry, what's on your mind today? Jerry, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, good, good. What is on your mind today?
Well, aloha, Michael, and thanks a lot for taking my call. I appreciate it. You made a statement in the last half hour about North Korea not having a central bank. I am not 100% sure about Iran or Syria, but I know Russia got rid of their central bankers several years ago. Could that be why they are our enemy?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons. To be technically accurate, you are correct. Iran does not have a private central bank. We're talking about private central bank as opposed to a state central bank. In Russia's case, their bank is still privately owned, but Putin took direct government control of it to manage Russia's public currency as a public utility, and that was pretty much the day that Russia went from being our friend and partner to the top of the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list. And so North Korea and Iran and Syria have government state central banks, but the goal of the Rothschilds, obviously, is for the entire world to be enslaved to privately owned central banks that create money, create currency out of thin air, and loan it into circulation at interest.
Well, I just wanted to bring up that phenomenon because it seems like our media is attacking all these countries that doesn't have a private central bank. And with that, aloha, and thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and many of these countries that the U.S. has regime changed in the last several years did not have private central banks. In fact, look at what happened with Libya, where Muammar Gaddafi closed the privately owned central bank there, set up a state bank, set up a new currency based on value, the gold dinar, and then told the rest of the world that Libya's oil was for sale, but only for the gold dinar, and that's when they went after him. So it's all being driven by money, the petrodollar, Bretton Woods, And if you are a parent of a child that is either at or approaching military age, it is time to make the decision as to whether you are willing to let your child be killed or crippled in an argument over whose brand of ink and paper the world will use for money for the next 100 years. Okay, we're going to take to the phones. Ann in Colorado, aloha, what is on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I have looked into various topics like the UN agenda for depopulation, Agenda 21, and they both seem to be the big umbrella. All these other components of war, the military-industrial complex, the medical-industrial complex, the pharmaceuticals, the bad food, air, water, vaccinations, and I know you're not big on chemtrails. It just all seems to fall under this huge umbrella of depopulation.
Well, there's been, and I'm going to have to take you through the commercial break, the station identification break here, and so don't hang up. Depopulation is something that's been talked about for a long time. And by the way, Agenda 21 is already renamed Agenda 30 because it's way, way behind schedule. But we even heard George Herbert Walker Bush talk about getting rid of the useless eaters and culling out the population. And there is an ugly reality that between Fukushima, the Deepwater Horizon, various other contaminations, including the GMO, right now there simply isn't enough safe, healthy food to feed the current human population, which is why they're out there now saying that people who want to eat healthy food are mentally ill and all the rest of that nonsense. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And continuing on with the comments made by Ann in Colorado, we have seen many times throughout history where rulers will try and basically shape their population into the ones who are useful and serve the rulers are allowed to live, and those who refuse to serve the rulers are killed off, one way or the other, genocides and so forth. But we know that the people who want the population reduced, they just want more for themselves. They're just looking at this huge population of human beings that are not really of any use to them, and saying,
one of them, as a retired disabled senior, I've served my purpose.
Okay, hang on. We got to trim the volume on the calls because that was like really messed up here. All right, try again.
I was saying I'm one of those disposables as a retired disabled senior.
Yeah, I understand. You know, and Social Security is broke, and that's certainly a big part of the depopulation agenda because we had this global baby boom following World War II, and all those people are now hitting retirement age, and because of declines in subsequent population, there aren't enough resources to take care of them. So the idea is let's just kill them all off. And one of the things that had a lot of people concerned about Obamacare was what were termed the death panels, where past a certain degree of illness...
I've heard of that.
Yeah, and past a certain degree of illness, they simply cut off everything and say, well, it's time for you to die.
Yeah.
Okay?
They got my number.
Well, you know, it's an ugly, ugly situation, and very clearly, we're everywhere on Earth, we're for the most part dealing with governments that are completely unconcerned with their own population. They're caught up in the game of empires and trying to bring about this new world order where the useful people are allowed to live, just barely, and everybody else is somehow gotten rid of.
The 1% versus the 99%.
Absolutely. That's absolutely what it is. But they won't get rid of all of the 99% because the 1%ers can't be bothered fixing their own plumbing or paving their own roads or fixing their own sewer systems. Okay. All right. Well, listen, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Okay. And we're going to let you go here. Okay. Anyway, welcome to hour number 3. And, yeah, that was really kind of loud there coming through. Apparently, the United States and South Korea have now activated their defensive missile system, the THAAD and whatever else they've got over there. They've turned it all on, and that, to me, is signaling that something momentous is about to happen. Because if you know military hardware, you don't just turn it on and leave it on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, unless it's got a limited lifespan. So if they're turning it on, it means something is about to happen. And apparently Russia and China are expressing their dismay over the U.S. rushing off to destroy yet another country. And that is really an important thing to look at. When they talk about how North Korea might be a threat, or China might be a threat, Russia's a threat, everybody's a... No, go back and look at who has been doing all the attacking, bombing, drone striking for the last 16 years. You know who the aggressor is in this latest world war. It's the United States. North Korea has a right to have defensive weapons to deter invasion. Every nation has a right to have weapons to deter invasion. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, if you look at all the countries the U.S. is bombing, drone striking, regime changing, they're all the ones that can't fight back. This is why the United States is victorious. We're whooping on little countries that can't fight back. The United States is getting a global reputation as a bully. All right, let's take another phone call. Steve in California, aloha. What's on your mind?
Well, to add to this, list my theory on this whole depopulation system, it was brought up today. When they talk about the vaccine, that video that Bill Gates had put out back in 2007, I think he was in a convention in Switzerland. I think if it's coming down to depopulation, he mentioned vaccines, using vaccines to depopulate.
Yes.
I think what he's probably referring to is more of a sterilization, because I think we're seeing already fertility rates are going down. Males are not quite as potent as they used to be, and women are having a hard time conceiving. And I think he's probably talking about, in combination with many things, maybe the GMO on top of the vaccines themselves, and maybe looking at a possibility of sterilization. Maybe that's what they're going to bring the population down just through those agents there.
Yeah. Well, the World Health Organization and some of these others have already been caught handing out free typhus vaccinations that turn out to contain drugs that permanently sterilize the women. And it's done without their consent. They don't know why they're no longer able to conceive. And out there's also another area of concern, which was the epicite gene. Now, this was a gene in a GMO corn where if you eat this corn, your body reacts to sperm as if it's an infection and kills it. And if that gene breaks out into the wild, you're looking at a potential extinction level event. And if you look at the sharp decline in birth rates in the United States of America, it is primarily among the Hispanic population who are the highest per capita consumers of corn.
Right. Yeah, I would look to this plan to be implemented probably somewhere first starting out in Africa. Africa's full of a lot of resources in the ground there. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's already thought about that.
That's where one of the World Health Organization scandals erupted. They were handing out free typhus vaccinations in one of the nations there, and some of the doctors got suspicious because normally typhus is a single shot, and these women were being given 3 shots spaced out over a couple of months. So they took one of the vaccines and they had it analyzed, and they found this drug in there that permanently sterilizes women. So yeah, that's what they're trying to do. You know, Bill Gates, I can understand he's become the world's richest man selling Windows. Now he's sick and tired of all of us complaining about it. Just going to get rid of us.
Hey, thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Okay, now then, up in Chicago, which is held aloft as the poster child for gun control, 29 people were shot in less than 18 hours. Chicago rang in Easter with 34 people shot in a supposedly gun-free city. And those people out there doing the shooting are able to get guns, obviously. And they go on out and they pull the trigger because they know nobody out there is going to shoot back at them. It'll be fun. Now, then, we all remember the Boston Marathon bombing. Just had the anniversary on that one. And some rather interesting information is starting to surface that, in point of fact, the FBI was in communication with the Tsarnaev brothers before the Marathon bombing. And the Department of Homeland Security is now admitting the terror drill that was taking place at the exact same time as the real bombing involved pretend, fake, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, backpack explosives. We saw exactly the same thing during the 772 bombing in London. Security drill going on. We found out somebody went through the Muslim section of London recruiting workers to play at being terrorists for the security exercise. One of the suspects in the London bombing was a brand new father, and I'm sorry. Guys who've just had a kid, they're not going to go out and blow themselves up for whatever cause they're being told. But a brand new father might need some extra money. So some guy working for the company that's running the security drill comes to him and says, look, we just need you for one day to go on out and carry this backpack onto a train and see if security forces will detect it and catch you. And it's just a fake bomb, so don't worry, and we'll pay you when you get back. And by the time they realize that that's not a fake bomb they're wearing, it's way too late. Now, the reality is that the Marathon bombing, we know it was not the Tsarnaev brothers, because the photographed remains of the pressure cooker bombs showed them in black backpacks with a square white patch on the top of them. The photos of the Tsarnaev brothers just before the explosion, one is wearing a white backpack, the other one wearing gray. Neither one has the patch. But there were people in the area wearing those black backpacks with the white squares on top. And they were all dressed identically with black jackets and khaki pants. When they were by themselves, they just looked like ordinary people. But when they were standing together, it was obviously a uniformed team of some kind. But I could have gone into that court and gotten Sokar acquitted just on the basis of a reasonable doubt. Because if the bombs are in black backpacks and the Tsarnaev brothers were wearing white and gray backpacks, that's your reasonable doubt right there. Now here's one that's a little weird. Over in Sweden, there is an expert. I guess there's way too many of those over in Sweden with their feminist government. The world's first feminist government, huzzah, huzzah. And they're dealing with the rapes, and they're trying to basically disconnect it from the immigration because they're still pushing that open border situation. And by the way, Sweden is a country has absorbed a huge number of these refugees coming from the Middle East. It's a huge, huge problem up there. So there's this expert that's saying the rising rapes in Sweden are due to global warming. And it's got nothing to do with the soaring Muslim immigration, even though the rapists tend to be Muslim. It's not immigration. It's global warming. It is global warming, which is going to be a very, very tough sell because Sweden woke up to snow and record low temperatures on Easter. The chilliest April night in decades. Somebody sent me this little article from Debbie Lockwood on how climate change is racist. I'm not even sure how they get there, but it's really ridiculous. I think they're running out of good ideas for propaganda, so they're just throwing anything out there. I think they make this stuff up with a dartboard. Put it on out in the corporate media. Now, you've probably been following today, there's a big story involving Facebook where a gentleman named Steve Steffens apparently murdered an elderly man and broadcast it live on Facebook Live. and the police are trying to find him. At one point they said they had reached him on his cell phone. He's claiming he has already killed 14 others, and he's going to go on killing people and live streaming it until he is caught. Okay, my first question is the fact that this guy is getting away with this proof that all this talk about tracking us through our cell phones was a big bluff? Meanwhile, liberals are out there screaming that this is going to encourage white supremacists, because in this case the suspect is black. This is just going to encourage the white supremacists. How about the guy that this Steve killed? Politicians are always going to behave exactly the same way. All they think about is the agenda they are paid to push. No matter what happens, push the agenda. Perception is all that matters. Truth doesn't mean anything anymore. We're in a post-truth society where our job is to manipulate perceptions. Do us all a favor, all of you listening to the show, don't be manipulated anymore. Don't let your perceptions and beliefs control you anymore. Get the facts. And you're going to have to dig for them. Don't wait for somebody to step up to you and say, here is the truth and here are the facts, because they're going to give you what they think will make you believe what they want you to believe. Now, Facebook is urging their users to report fake news. They've got a little button on there where if somebody has posted an article to Facebook that you think is fake, you can hit a button and get them blacklisted. Well, you can tell this is going to be wide open to abuse. If you tell us, if you post an article that is embarrassing for some politician, they're just going to hire a public relations firm to go have their people go on Facebook and hit that button. Oh, it's fake news. It's fake news. And these established social media companies are just turning into another face of the controlled corporate media, which is why you should stop using Facebook or Google and go to some of these new up-and-coming social media platforms, which at least so far seem to support the principle of freedom of speech. So, meanwhile, even though Facebook is out there deleting articles about Hillary's crimes and all the rest of it, they're still allowing articles on child pornography and extremist material. This has now backfired on them because now a lot of advertisers are leaving Facebook. First of all, its readership isn't what it used to be. People are already starting to leave Facebook and Google. But apparently, Facebook is putting some of their advertisers' ads along this very, very questionable material. And the advertisers are getting very, very upset about it, which I can certainly understand. I can certainly understand that. Now, apparently, and this is an article from InfoWars, InfoWars is claiming that Google has hired contractors to remove or limit Alex Jones' website, Infowars.com, from its search engines. So Google, like Facebook, is becoming part of the controlled corporate media. And instead of Google, you can use Yandex or DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is the one that I am currently using for the most part. And I noticed when I set up my Raspberry Pi and the Chrome browser that came with it, the default search engine is DuckDuckGo. So there we are. Now then, let's talk about the shadow brokers. This is the group that has started releasing NSA hacking tools to the web. I'm not sure I am really happy with this idea because obviously those with nefarious intent, and I mean besides the NSA, are going to be grabbing and using these weapons. Now, the upside is, obviously, security experts are going to look at this data and start hardening their platforms against it. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed this or not, the threat to lock up the Apple devices never happened. And I don't think Apple paid the ransom, but there were patches and updates to the Apple platforms just before the deadline. So they got ahead of that one. So let's get on back here to the shadow brokers. And they've leaked all these NSA hacking tools, and they leaked the password. So people are starting to look at this stuff. And apparently, researchers have found in this data code that seems to connect the NSA to the Stuxnet cyber weapon that was used on Iran to wreck their uranium centrifuges. Now, the problem with that is Stuxnet broke into the wild. Stuxnet worked by targeting these very standard, universal Siemens programmable controllers. And they're not just used in nuclear facilities. They're used anywhere that you have computerization in your manufacturing process. Washing machines, fast food, whatever. And Stuxnet broke into the wild, and it caused all kinds of damage to factories all over the world, especially in places like Russia. They're not happy about that. Now, we know that at the time of the tsunami and earthquake at Fukushima, Stuxnet was in computers around Fukushima itself. We're going to have more about this when we come on back from these words from our sponsors. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to take a phone call. Charles in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Charles in Canada, are you there? Okay, we seem to have problems with our phone system.
I'm here. Sorry, I seem to get cut off there for a second. I'm here. I've got a piece of information that I heard on Alex Jones yesterday. I thought you would find very interesting. He had Daniel Estulin on.
Yes.
And Estulin said that that the president is backed by the Rothschilds. And Clinton was backed by the eugenicists, and they basically have a difference of opinion, and I thought that would really tie up the thing as to why there's the pro-Israel stance. So having heard that, I thought that's something you would find interesting.
You know, there's a lot of information being thrown out there to try and keep the situation muddied. I just got an email saying that there's a rumor floating around D.C. That Trump has been compromised because apparently while he was down on Jeff Epstein's island, they did get a video of him doing something extremely tacky, and they're threatening to release that video. And that would certainly do it. And again, I cannot understand anybody going to Epstein's island knowing it's obviously a honey trap and it's going to be wired and cameraed, and it shows extremely reckless behavior. But that's another rumor that's floating around.
Well, I do like Daniel Estulin. I found he's been very good in the past, so I thought I would pass that along.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the phone call. We're going to let you go. Now, getting on back to the shadow broker story. Basically, in this dump of NSA hacking tools, researchers have found strong indication that the NSA was, at least in part, the creator of the Stuxnet cyber weapon that was deployed against Iran's uranium centrifuges. And you need to understand that just within Iran, they were running the risk of creating a radioactive accident. If the centrifuges had broken open or something else like that, or if it started a fire. That uranium hexafluoride is combustible. But apparently, hey, we don't care, it's just Iranians. So Stuxnet broke out of Iran. It caused all kinds of damage all across the world, especially across Asia and Russia, because it targets these standard Siemens programmable controllers that are used to interface computers to various bits of machinery. And Stuxnet is known to have been in computers around the Fukushima power station when the quake and tsunami hit. And the Fukushima power station used those same Siemens controllers targeted by Stuxnet, and it is a matter of record that when the tsunami hit, many of the safety systems at Fukushima failed to operate correctly. And it raises the possibility that in their rush to get the mean old Iranians, the creators of Stuxnet, took what should have been a survivable incident at Fukushima into the world's worst nuclear disaster. And what is really alarming is this mindset that it's okay to do this kind of stuff as long as you achieve the objective. Unfortunately, this many years afterwards, I doubt there's anything left in the memories of the Siemens controllers. Apparently, the radiation is so intense inside the power station, even the robots, the brand new robots being sent in now are having their insides fried. So we're past the point of being able to confirm whether or not Stuxnet was present inside Fukushima, absent one of the Fukushima workers having a flash drive on their person that has the Stuxnet on it. Because that would have been the way that Stuxnet got into Fukushima and inevitably would have infected other flash drives heading out of Fukushima. That's how it got out of Iran. The aggressive version of Stuxnet, which apparently was made by Israel, was not just infecting the Iranian centrifuges, it was hopping onto flash drives to get to other places. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we go back to the phones here, just saw this article over at thehill.com. Democrats welcome Bernie takeover. And apparently, following last year's embarrassing defeat, the Democrats who had previously supported Hillary are now welcoming Bernie Sanders back to the fold and saying that he should be involved in the leadership of the Democratic Party to try and find its identity and rebuild its brand. And I think that's a positive thing because, quite frankly, I would have supported Bernie Sanders if he'd won the nomination. And I'll tell you right now, if the Democrats run Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard in 2020, they're going to have my support. I am that disenchanted with Donald Trump at this point. The only way I will support Donald Trump in 2020 is if Hillary runs again. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Nico in Southern California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I was calling to find out, is peak oil a myth or is it realistic?
That's a very complex question, and there's a couple of overlapping issues. The first is every once in a while we will hear the oil companies saying we're running out of oil, and there'll be a corresponding drive up of prices. And right now oil prices are still low after that oil price war with Russia, which has caused all kinds of harm to Europe, to Venezuela, to Saudi Arabia. And so there may be an effort to try and get the prices back on up there again. Now, that being said, I made a comment earlier in the show about unit cost of extraction. And what that means is there's all kinds of oil in the deep crust. But if it costs more than a barrel's worth of oil in energy to bring that barrel of oil to the surface, then the party is over. And you're not going to get any more. The fact that they're pushing this fracking technology suggests to me that pretty much all of the available shallow oil and gas has been harvested. And so there may be a genuine peak occurring right now. But a big part of the issue is this idea that it's a fossil fuel. And that goes back to the fact that coal, which is actually kind of solidified oil, was found in strata that had fossils in it. And so the conventional wisdom is all the oil and gas and coal is basically the remains of these life forms that were compressed down into carbon and coal. And scientists now are beginning to realize that what actually happened is oil flowed up into these fossil-bearing strata and hardened there, and it was just a coincidence the fossils are in the coal. A lot of research is starting to show that oil didn't come from the dead dinosaurs, that it is in fact still being produced by deep crust microbes who are producing vast quantities of methane, and methane under heat and pressure forms these longer chain hydrocarbon chemicals that form the basis of petroleum. But again, it's deep in the crust, and unfortunately the human race is using up the oil faster than all those microbes can produce it. At some point...
Do you have any... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, at some point, I do think that we need to think about other forms of energy, like fusion power. The problem is most of the oil and gas is sought after by war-making countries because you can't power a battleship on solar cells. Yes, there are nuclear-powered submarines and aircraft carrier, but the vast majority of our naval fleet is still fueled on petroleum products, kerosene primarily, and it uses up huge amounts of those resources, and that's why they're trying to get ordinary people to switch to electric-powered cars, which, for the most part today, are still powered from oil-fired power plants. The electric car is really only going to be a solution when we have another source of electric generation. Obviously, fission nuclear power has dangers, but it is still favored because fission nuclear reactors produce bomb stuff. You could get electric power from what is called the thorium cycle reactors, and they're considerably safer and less toxic than uranium fission reactors, but you can't get bomb stuff out of thorium reactors, and that's why most countries aren't really investing in them, although some countries are starting to build thorium cycle reactors. Ultimately, I think if they can get hot fusion to work, or they can find out, what is actually going on with what is called cold fusion, because while they acknowledge it's not really fusion, there is something going on there that seems to be producing a surplus of energy. And I know the U.S. military is experimenting with it. But the biggest market for oil and gas is the war machine.
Well, that actually answered, all of my questions, Mike.
Okay, well, good.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, you're welcome. And thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind?
Michael, yeah, good day, Michael. You're kidding me about supporting Bernie Sanders over Donald Trump. Let me explain something, Michael. Trump right now is 50% approval rating. It's going up. And let me ask you something, Michael.
Wait a minute. The people who are telling you Trump's approval rating is going up are the same people who told you Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons.
Rasmussen and all Newsmax and all, they're all Fox. They're all saying that today in the news. But what I want to say is this, Michael. You got to be kidding. You got a schmuck like Bernie Sanders. You would support him, that schmuck, that Zionist, that idiot communist. That guy's a total blowhard communist, Michael, and you know that. And he's a commie from...
Hello? We seem to have lost the connection. All right. Well, basically, in a nutshell, and again, it was like I did last year. It wasn't so much that I was for Trump as I was opposed to Hillary. In 2020, I'm going to be opposed to Donald Trump. And if it comes down to Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, yeah, I'm going to go for Bernie Sanders. I'd love to see Tulsi Gabbard get in there. I am so impressed with her, and I'm not just being prejudiced because she's from right here on this island of Oahu. This is clearly an independent spirit out there. All right. Now then, we were talking about computers, including, obviously, the ones that are running our phone system. And as we mentioned before, we're going to mention it again, Microsoft is now pulling the support trigger on Windows 7 and Windows 8 for the newest Intel and AMD chips. Now, normally when Microsoft comes out with an operating system, it will be released. Then when the next operating system comes along, support for the first operating system will continue. Security upgrades, bug fixes, and so forth and so on, until the operating system is formally sunset, at which point it supposedly goes away. Well, apparently Microsoft has decided that the advent of these new Intel and AMD chips justifies them ending support for Windows 7 and Windows 8 prematurely in order to try and force more people onto Windows 10, which is an absolute disaster of an operating system. And so Microsoft has gone back on its own support policy. saying we don't want to be bothered with these new chips. You know, buy Windows 10. And by the way, a lot of people are still on XP because when Microsoft got done with XP and went to Vista, XP was actually working pretty well. I liked XP. Hated Vista, hated Millennium Edition. But Microsoft's goal, like most other corporations, is planned obsolescence. You will buy this and you will use it only for these years, and then we will make you buy another one, and that's exactly what they're doing here. And the problem we have with Microsoft, and indeed much of the American software industry, is the new products coming on out are nowhere near as good as what they're replacing. I remember when Adobe came out with Creative Studio, and they had a sound recording tool in there which was nowhere near as good as the standalone Adobe Audition. It was missing all kinds of features that I regularly use and need to support Claire's choir. And again, if you've never seen it, there's a documentary out there called The Light Bulb Conspiracy or Pyramids of Waste that talks about planned obsolescence. Yes, products are designed to fail quickly so that you have to buy a new one. A product that doesn't wear out is considered a disaster for the U.S. economy. Now then, and by the way, little footnote here. A while back, I got a Raspberry Pi little computer on a card. I'm having so much fun with that. It is really, it's fun. It reminds me of what it felt like in the early days of computers with the Apple and the Commodore 64 and, you know, machines where you can get in there and talk to the bare metal. And, of course, with all the open source software that's out there, you can verify for yourself that you don't have a whole bunch of NSA spyware in there. In fact, there are operating systems for the Pi that are distributed as source code. So you can actually put together your own computer that you know is free from surveillance software. And that would be a really good thing. Now then, on to science and health. You're going to love this one. Apparently, fire-retardant chemicals used in mattresses and fillings in furniture are linked to a 74% rise in thyroid cancer tumors. And, of course, the problem with a mattress is when you're asleep at night, your face is buried in that thing. You're breathing what comes out of that mattress, whether it's mites or the chemicals used in the manufacture. And you know, all those foam mattresses you're seeing advertised all over TV, apparently they're putting out all kinds of toxic chemicals. But that's okay, we got your money, and the mattress is making money, and that's the only thing that really matters. And if you get cancer, well, that's good for the medical industrial complex, because then they get your money. Now then, over in Iran, you're going to love this one. Iran has held a national nanotechnology Olympiad for school students. And these kids are, school students are working on nanotechnology. They're coming up with the next thing. It's a technology incubator, and they're trying to come up with a domestic industry, products based on nanotechnology. When was the last time you saw something like that in the American school system? You're not going to find it under Common Core. Common Core is too busy teaching everybody that human-caused global warming is real. And the Second Amendment doesn't give you an individual right to keep and bear arms. One of the reasons for all of these H-1B visas that are out there is because American education isn't producing students that are trained in the latest technologies for industry. It's producing indoctrinated liberal snowflakes, art history majors, people needing safe spaces, people trained in spotting microaggressions. I'm sorry, you can't actually get a job with those skills. All right, so let's talk about the space programs. As you know, I'm a huge, huge fan of those. And apparently Cassini has been studying Saturn's moons, Enceladus, and they are convinced there is a liquid ocean underneath an ice crust. and they've discovered hydrogen in the plume of gas and icy particles spewing from the surface. They have geysers, ice geysers. And they're saying that basically the presence of free hydrogen could provide the fuel for life on that moon. And I think if we're going to be looking for life on other worlds, we should be looking for life that is so different from what we have here that there's no question about it. Now, because of what they did following Viking, where they declared that the experiment that showed indigenous life on Mars didn't find anything. Following that, all the spacecraft sent to Mars were not sterilized, which means when they finally identify life on Mars, there's going to be a major problem making sure it's indigenous versus something that hitched a ride to Mars on a U.S. spaceship. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Clyde in Louisiana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, you hit on something. It's the updates that kills those old systems in that computer, and they say that Windows 10, you can't stop the automatic updates. It will force you to update. You can't turn them off. But my tech over at my telephone company said he went around the back, and you can shut off the automatic updates in Windows 10. I just wanted to put that out.
Yeah, you can. It's very, very difficult to do, but you can. But you're kind of caught in a bind here, because if you turn off the updates and you don't get the security updates, you could get hit by cyber criminals. But if you turn on the updates, you might get something from Microsoft that actually wrecks the system. Because they've had a couple of major embarrassments where they'll send out an update patch to their computers, and it'll cause huge amounts of damage. It'll brick the machines, and these people are having to back up and restore from a previous version. And it's a shame that computers and software are indemnified from product liability because they're not going to produce a better product until they have a financial incentive to do so. But as long as you have certain industries like computers, software, vaccines that can't be sued for bad product design, they're going to go on selling bad products because that is more profitable than selling a product that's been tested and made perfect.
Okay, well, like I got an old Windows Vista that won't do everything because they shut a lot of stuff off, but it never took updates and it still works. And I don't care who hacks into my computer as long as it works, but there's no financial information in there, nothing. I got nothing in there they can steal. So
yeah, the same here.
I'm good to go.
The same here, yeah. We don't keep our banking information on the computers, and neither should you, because it's open season on computer users and smartphone users, tablet users, and apparently the government is okay with it because people are buying security software, and that's good for the economy to make you buy things you don't really want and wouldn't need if the government would actually do its job. But again, with all this NSA spying and CIA computer spying and FBI and everything, they don't really seem to be able to get a handle on the computer crime. And remember, Kaspersky says that the Equation Group hackers are actually part of the NSA. The NSA may be the biggest cyber criminals of all. We've got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, Clyde, and we'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, one of my favorite movies of all time is, of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it was actually that movie, along with Mary Poppins, which got me interested in going into visual effects in motion pictures. And, of course, there was a sequel, 2010, and I remember this one line in 2010 where the Roy Scheider character has just reawakened from hibernation. He's on this Russian spaceship. They're going out to Jupiter. And there's a lot of tension on the flight deck because back on Earth, Russia and the U.S. are edging closer and closer to war. And the Scheider character, Haywood Floyd is his character name, and he's talking to the rest of the crew. Look, our governments may be enemies, but we're scientists. And they all make friends and they move forward with a scientific mission. And that's very positive to see. And it's happening right now. Despite the politicians in the U.S. and Russia screaming at each other, the space scientists are still working together. And apparently it has been proposed there's going to be a joint Russia-U.S. mission to Venus. And it will involve a Russian rocket and orbital module alongside a U.S. atmospheric plane and durable surface probes. And that will be a really great thing to see happen. Now, over time, there's been kind of this weird phenomenon, if you will, regarding exploration of the other planets. The U.S. has had very good luck on Mars and terrible luck on Venus. Russia has had great luck on Venus and terrible luck on Mars. And it just sort of worked out that way. It's certainly not intentional. But I think this would be really good. There's a lot of interesting things happening on Venus. And it's great to see that they're still moving forward saying, yeah, our politicians can be idiots. Let's actually work together and make something wonderful happen. Anyway, I actually got an email here from somebody who apparently has taken a Raspberry Pi computer and is actually using it to run a complete automated radio station. Now, when I started in radio way back again, we had turntables and round knobs and little cart machines and everything, but you can run it all out of computers now, which is what RBN does. It can take a lot of equipment, but this individual apparently has a complete automated radio station running on a single Pi computer, and he says the audio quality is actually better than his older computer with the expensive audio card. And even better, he can actually run this thing on solar power. Obviously not the transmitter itself or the internet connection. I don't know if he's going out over the air or not. But yeah, that's the beauty of the Pi. You've got, in fact, you can even use it as an emergency computer. Just have it all set up with what you're going to need, put it in your bailout kit, and you've got a computer you can take with you. It's certainly a lot easier to carry than a laptop. And they do run on very little power, especially this one, the Pi Zero. I mean, look how, for those of you on BAM user, look how tiny that is. That is a complete Linux computer. And that is just, I'm stunned because I'm old enough to remember how big computers used to be. There's the music. Time for me to go on out and do the Jim Goddard Show. We'll be back here tomorrow on Republic Broadcasting. Please share what you are learning here with everybody. We are on the verge of World War III. It is up to we, the American people, to put a stop to this nonsense before it really gets out of hand. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.